Hi everyone, it's Mindful Monday. Welcome to the second video, the second Mindful Monday. It's a little later than I had anticipated, but it's still Monday, so that's a good thing. Today I wanted to talk to you about something called shame. And I think if you're a human being, whether you know it or not, shame shows up in your life, it shows up in my life, it shows up in our lives. Um, I suppose a good way of helping you connect with what I'm talking about is, for example, have you ever had a pimple on your face and it made it hard for you to look people in the eye? Or have you ever struggled with a health condition that made you feel inadequate or less than, or like something was wrong with you, like you were broken in some way? Have you ever struggled with some kind of an insecurity or belief about yourself that makes it, or made it, or maybe still currently makes it hard or impossible to speak your truth, or to be vulnerable and to be okay with vulnerability, to therefore go deeper in your intimacy with your partner? Do you have times when you'd really like to express yourself one way, but you're feeling paralyzed and you're unable to do that because of this kind of overwhelming fear of either I'm not good enough, or what if I'm rejected, or sort of like, the what ifs, right? What if something happens bad when I do this? And the underlying thing is, what if I find out that I'm actually not good enough? Or what if my belief that I'm not good enough is confirmed? So that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. And they say that, and who knows if this is right or not, but they say that we tend to teach that which we must learn the most. And I actually kind of agree with that. I know for me, all the things that I talk about, all the things that I work through with my clients are usually things that I've been through. Maybe I went through them the day before, or the week before, or the month before, or years before. But generally, the work that I'm doing with people and my coaching and here with you and in my blogs is coming from a place of experience, of things that I've actually personally been through. So my friend and I were talking, my colleague slash friend, were talking about how shame can be quite an epidemic. And in fact, it is quite an epidemic. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. It holds us back. For example, if your career requires that you be more visible, or maybe you have a dream in your heart about a career path that requires you be more visible, when there's shame, when there's that shame that shows up like, if you do this, they won't like you, or what will they think, or what if you find out that, you really are broken, or whatever it might be, it prevents you from moving forward in your life. And what happens when we don't move forward in our life is we start to die inside, right? When there's a dream, when there's a desire, when there's something that wants to be expressed through us, and we're not following through on that, we're not taking the steps or the actions towards that thing, when we're paralyzed by the fear, our soul begins to die inside. And when shame shows up in things like relationships, and say, for example, you're struggling with a health condition, or maybe it's some kind of a disease that you've been diagnosed with that maybe affects your relationship in some way. Maybe it's just the way that you feel about yourself, or maybe it affects your relationship sexually, or maybe, it affects your relationship in some way. And that shame can really hold you back from receiving your partner's love, receiving your partner's acceptance. Because when we're not loving and accepting of ourselves, it's actually impossible to really let that in from our partners and from the people around us. So although it can appear as though I'm seeking this validation, or we're seeking, or I need this person or these people to approve of me, or validate, or accept, or love me, or tell me that it's going to be okay, even if they did, I can pretty much guarantee you, if temporarily that works, it's not going to last forever. Because ultimately what we're seeking is our own ability to deeply and completely love and accept ourselves, no matter what is going on. And that's always what it comes back to, at least in my experience, in my work. So really just recognizing how this shows up, and how this can hold us back in our work, and how this shame can hold us back in are thriving in our health. For example, if you're struggling with something, a health condition that brings shame, a lot of times what I see, and I've even been guilty of it, is that we just want the problem to go away. Right? We just want to fix it. Just give me a Band-Aid so that I can show myself in the world as though nothing's wrong. And instead of really getting to the root of what's going on and really going for that deeper healing, we tend to just mask the problem and pop a pill or put on a Band-Aid for the issue, never really getting to the root of it. And a lot of times the issue just gets worse, because if we don't resolve it at the root, it's just going to perpetuate itself. It's just going to deepen. It's just going to grow. It's just going to show up somewhere else, right? So this is how shame can really be an epidemic in our lives. So some of the symptoms you might experience, that one or all of us, experience when shame is present, are things like disgust with yourself, disengaging from life, disengaging from your partner, disengaging from sex, disengaging from your work, from your from actions around moving forward or being more visible, holding back, having some real, genuine gold inside of you in terms of art or writing or ideas, and holding that back from the world because your shame is stopping you, right? So holding back, obsessing. So this is a big one, a big way in which shame manifests itself. A big symptom of shame is that we obsess about what is wrong. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with this situation? Why did this happen? Obsessing about what's wrong, focused on the problem, right? Instead of asking higher quality questions, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Another thing would be seeking outside validation. That is also a symptom of shame, right? If there's shame present, usually that is stopping one from being able to give their own acceptance, give their own validation, give themselves their own love deeply and completely, and therefore the seeking for that outside of ourselves, that staying in that constant that battle, that catch-22 of we think it comes from this place, but it really comes from this place. We think it comes from there, but it really comes from here. And then things like feeling less than, avoiding rejection, right? All the times that we just don't do that thing that we feel called to do because we're avoiding having to face that moment of rejection, right? So these are some symptoms, right? If you're experiencing any of those, there's probably many, many more, but these are the ones I'm most familiar with. And shame shows up everywhere. It shows up in our relationships, like body shame, right? I don't feel like I'm sexy enough, or I'm too big, or I'm too skinny, or, for women, are my boobs too small, or are they too big? For men, it's like, well, we don't have to even go there, but where my head just went, right? Or it's things like, it could be little things, something you don't like about yourself, the color of your skin, markings, scars that we have from our past. It could be anything. That if we have shame, right, it holds us back from being able to be fully open and available to our partners, to fully express ourselves in that way. It shows up around health. For example, health issues can show up. And a lot of times this concept of, I feel shameful because my partner is being like this, or I feel shameful because I have this health condition, or I feel shameful because my money isn't where I want it to be, or because I haven't gotten to where I want to be in my career, or whatever it might be. We get caught in that vicious cycle of believing that my shame comes from these outside things. And so we think that if I just fix these outside things, this shame will go away. Then I'll feel whole. Then I'll feel complete. Then I'll feel okay in the world. Then I'll be able to go out in the world and to be free, finally to be me. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And actually, it's good news that it doesn't work like that, because if it did, we actually don't have any control, right? Because then we're dependent upon things outside of ourselves. So this is about coming back, right? We spoke about this last week on Mindful Monday, feeling the inner body and calling our power back, coming back to our center, coming back to really feeling our inner body. And when we do that, we feel empowered, and we can just bring that intense presence to this disempowered feeling, therefore setting ourselves free. So just to reiterate, our shame can show up in our relationships, our health, our money, and our career. But the cool thing is, our relationships, our health, our money, and our career, those are like 4 of our biggest teachers in life. I mean, think about it. I actually can't think of another area in our life that's a greater teacher. I mean, our relationships, right? The people in our lives, our children, our friends, our parents, our siblings, our our in-laws, our intimate loved partner. They are such a mirror, right? They're such a mirror for us. So of course, all of our stuff is going to come up. Money, right? Because there's this kind of this status quo, and there's this sort of all of these boxes that we get stuck in around that. And career, constantly comparing, and am I where I should be, or why are they further along, blah, 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 blah. And it's all just shame wearing a mask. It's the same exact thing when we move away from loving myself deeply and completely, from being able to accept oneself deeply and completely. Then we start looking outside of us, comparing, and right, that shame comes in. So instead of sort of allowing these arenas to be a kind of an open, vulnerable place for the shame to take over, what we want to start to do is build our shame resilience. Being able to notice when that shame is showing up, and especially like being aware that yes, it's going to show up in my relationship. Yes, it's going to show up in my career. Yes, it's going to show up in my health. Yes, it's going to show up in my money. And sometimes it's, wow, I've had so much success. I've made so much money. I'm doing so well. And I feel shameful about that, right? For whatever reason, we all have different stuff, but it shows up. And these are the triggers, and therefore also our greatest teachers. So the solution, right? What's the solution? Let's get to this solution, please. The solution is, so we're moving from this whole, I just need this to be fixed and then I'll be okay, right? I just need this to be fixed and then I will no longer feel not good enough. And the solution is, no matter what happens, I will be okay. No matter what happens, I am whole. No matter what happens, I am complete. No matter what happens, I am loved, right? I am loved. And then that's moving us into our shame resilience, right? And today I'll speak about 3 ways that we can really have this shame resilience. Number 1, to see is to be free. So going back to that first video from last week, feeling the inner body, seeing, just notice, just acknowledge. It's not complicated, right? Here I am, I'm wanting to be a certain way with my partner. Shame comes in, preventing that from being possible, and I notice. There's that shame, right? I see what it is, and I'm going to stop it there. I'm not going to give it any more power. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to notice it, and I'm going to not let it get any bigger, right? Because then what shame starts to do is it starts to tell us stories, and then we start to make that our story about ourselves, right? And it perpetuates and gets stronger and bigger and more powerful. No, noticing it, that's it. Noticing, that's shame, and I don't have to let it go any further than there. The second one would be just see it and move on, right? Being on a mission, moving towards your goal, moving towards your desire is the fastest and best, most effective way to dissolve shame, right? Keep taking contrary action. See it and move on. Take contrary action. I have a mentor that always said to me, Erin, you cannot think your way into right action because your thinking is the problem. You have to act your way into right thinking. So see it and move on. Acting our way into right thinking. The third would be asking better questions, right? Instead of what's wrong with me, why me, what's wrong with this, how come that, comparing. Asking things like, how is this happening for me? What is in this for me to learn? What is right and good and perfect about me and about this situation? What can I take away from this? How can this bring my partner and I closer? How can this bring me even closer to speaking my truth in the world and feeling even more free? Right? Asking better questions, higher quality questions. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up because this video is actually a little longer than I was anticipating, and that's okay. But I'll go ahead and stop there for now. If you have any questions or you want me to elaborate any more on this subject matter, I'd love to hear from you. And if you have anything of your own to contribute to this conversation around shame, I'd love to hear about that as well. Contributions are so powerful for me, and I really thrive when I hear from you guys. So I'd love to hear from you. You can also, if you like this video, please share it with your friends. If you'd like more of these videos, every Monday, Mindful Monday, you can find me here or subscribing to this channel. leaving your comments below. And then if you stay tuned throughout the week, if you follow me on Facebook or you know my blog, erinlanahanmethod.com, you can also get more on this topic throughout the week as I'll be posting. I think every Wednesday that blog will be hitting my website. So stay tuned for that as well. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I will see you guys soon. Thank you so much. Namaste.